You're listening to The Afternoon Shift. I'm Niala Boodhoo. The world's most powerful public relations firms stake their business on having the ability to influence people and policy, right? Well, now it seems several top PR firms are taking a stand against climate change denial. 10 of the world's largest public relation firms, such as Weber Shandwick and WPP, that's the parent company of Burson Marsteller and Ogilvy Public Relations, say they'll no longer do business with entities that reject the existence of climate change. This was all because of a survey from the Climate Investigation Centre that was done with the UK's Guardian newspaper. It tried to find out where the top PR houses stood on representing those who reject the science of climate change. Notably not on that list was Chicago-based Edelman public relations firm. Joining me to talk about why is Edelman's Ben Boyd and Kert Davies, the executive director of the Climate Investigation Center. Gentlemen, welcome to the Afternoon Shift.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Nana.
Kert, let's start with you. What's the Climate Investigation Center, and why did you do this survey?
The Climate Investigation Center is a relatively new organization building on the work that I did at Greenpeace for 13 years, looking into the funding of climate science denial and organizations like the Heartland Institute there in Chicago and Exxon's involvement with this, the Koch brothers' involvement. And this organization is dedicated to researching and uncovering where the climate debate, the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And so we're digging into a variety of different things. People can find out more at climateinvestigations.org.
How many firms did you send the survey to, Kert?
We sent it to the top 25 firms operating in the U.S. Based on their revenue, and it's a lot of revenue.
And how many firms responded?
We only got responses from a few firms directly, and then some punted to their parent organizations, their parent companies, this WPP. So in total, we got direct responses from 6, and then we got indirect responses from another few. So it's a mixed bag, but the response we accidentally got from Edelman straight up was their only wrong answers for this guy from the CEO at the time, who's now left the company, accidentally emailed me. So I think a lot of companies probably felt the same way. We don't need to answer these questions, and we think it was a pretty simple question. Do you acknowledge the threat of climate change?
Well, Ben, let's ask him. Let's ask you to respond to that. Do you want to answer that question? No,
I think, look, it's really simple. If I were Kert, I'd feel exactly the same way. I mean, the fact of the matter is Edelman fully recognizes the reality of and the science behind climate change, and we do not accept client assignments that aim to deny climate change. And I think, unfortunately, and there's no excuse other than just poor communication, which is wildly ironic for a communications firm, but a junior staff on our side handled the completion of the questionnaire. It was not Mark Haas, and again, that email was completely unacceptable and inappropriate. So, I would begin by first clarifying, that is our position, and I would also offer Kert and the CIC an apology for what was an inaccurate or rather incomplete answer to what I agree with him to be 4 very simple questions. And I would also state unequivocally Edelman's desire to work with him and the CIC in terms of further investigation and kind of engagement with our industry as outlined in his larger post of today.
Ben, you said that you don't accept client assignments that aim to, as you said, obstruct or dilute regulation designed to address climate change. How does that square with your representation of, say, like the American Petroleum Institute? That's one of your clients, right?
Yeah, I think that the reality is, we want to paint a lot of these debates as black and white, right? So if you look at the notion of ethanol and greenhouse gas emissions and, the points of view around ethanol as an acceptable alternative, the fact of the matter is there are varying opinions. So again, we do not work for deniers, but we recognize that there is great nuance and gray in this conversation. And I think what we have espoused in terms of our own corporate view is the need for business and government to work together as it relates to these large societal complex issues and topics. But again, we fully accept and believe the science behind climate change, and we do not work for clients who deny that.
Well, one of your clients is the American Legislative Exchange Council, which just held its meeting in Dallas. And I don't know if Edelman's still working for them, but were in 2012 when they ran into some protests from outside groups. And ALEC just hosted this meeting with the Heartland Institute, with this other group called CFAC hardcore climate deniers who were instructing legislators on how to attack the EPA, how to question the science. I don't know that you do that work with them.
Ben, do you still work with them?
I'd have to look at our client roster with, thousands of clients of varying scale. And, so I'd be happy to look at that, Kert, and connect back with you on that in terms of active engagement with them. I'm just simply not aware of that.
Ben, to Kert's point, now that you say you don't do that, have you, obviously, you're such a large firm, I can't even imagine how many clients you have. Do you have a process of going through and determining whether or not there are people you will work with or won't work with them in terms of climate change?
Well, I think we certainly have a policy which is available on our website. That's pretty black and white. I think that policy is shared clearly internally, and our client leaders are expected to uphold the values that we espouse as a firm and that we believe as a business as the right and ethical way to operate. I cannot guarantee to you guys or anyone else that in a firm of 6,000 I won't have ethical lapses. What I can guarantee you is that when ethical lapses, when and if those lapses happen, those choices have consequences, and we move on those. But we do not consciously, especially from a management perspective, accept revenue from those who deny the science behind climate change.
Kert, let me ask you one last question, which is, Ben was talking about the nuances of this. Did you hear other firms say that as well? What's your position on this?
There was a broad range of responses to our survey. Very interesting stuff. Some firms were being pushed by their clients. One firm engaged with IBM who said, well, what's your carbon footprint to the ad firm? And they didn't have one. They had to develop one to take the contract. Edelman has a whole carbon accounting program I didn't even know about because it's in the appendix to their citizenship report. They're doing their own carbon footprint and have targets on airline miles reduction. That's remarkable. But as you said earlier, it barely squares with a multi-million-dollar contract to push oil, push the Keystone pipeline without mentioning potential carbon impact. It's very easy in the ad industry to avoid subjects and to stress the positive.
Well, but Kert, to my question about did you find that PR firms or other firms you talk to, are they saying no to these campaigns, or are they saying no to firms who don't believe in climate change? What are other firms telling you?
Some committed. We didn't really ask that question. The Guardian asked that question, and they got commitments from several firms that they were not working with climate deniers, and that is a major step forward and is a question that's frankly never been put to this industry before. The reason we did this survey was because pretty much every other sector has been questioned about climate change. You take banking or insurance or the oil industry, obviously, all of them over the decades have been questioned. Do you believe in this? Do you think it's a major push? Because we have to have the corporate community working alongside with governments to solve this problem. And the PR industry has just never been asked. So I think it's a work in progress, getting the PR industry to wake up to the fact that they are important. One commentator in an article said, this is probably the biggest PR problem in the world, getting people to understand the urgency of climate change. It's a very hard thing to get done. We need the help of the PR professionals to do that.
And Kert, now that Kert has posed the question to you, what's your response to how you think PR firms, what responsibility do you think public relation firms and Edelman has to this whole issue of climate change and climate change deniers?
Yeah, not a great question. Unequivocally, I think we have stated that business has to play a role in solving these complex world problems. I don't think that Edelman or the PR industry is an exception to that assumption. I think the work that we do around the Trust Barometer looks and points to the expectations of peoples around the world in 27 countries where we survey for business to be a responsible, good actor with actually greater trust in business to lead change. So again, we do not work with those who deny the science. I think we continue to scrub on a daily basis, our client roster and look at the behaviors of our clients even outside of the assignments that we have. And I think our commitment, as he outlined in terms of our own carbon footprint and presence, is something that we proactively began. Our work with Unilever is a demonstration, again, of a partnership in which we look at, how to help raise larger conversations in the public sphere that are important around the topics of sustainability and corporate behavior. That has been, a bold proclamation of our CEO in terms of what is necessary for business to be successful in the long term. And again, we are not in any way immune from that belief.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for joining me. That's Ben Boyd, the Global Chair of Corporate Practices for Edelman, based, of course, here in Chicago, and Kert Davies, the Executive Director of the Climate Investigation Center. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.